Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest tonight is a member of a very elite group. That's right, he has climbed and reached the summit of Mount Everest. We couldn't be happier that he is here with us to share his story. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Wicked Late, Dr. Tim Warren. Dr. Tim, how are you, sir?
Thanks for having me. I'm fantastic.
Thank you very much for being here. I have so many questions about then. As you were growing up, were you into climbing? I mean, I think I read that you didn't really get into it till later in life.
No, but with my family, my mom was a part-time nurse, my dad was a teacher, and we would go camping. Every school vacation, we would go to Maine, New Hampshire, and backpack and hike. And then in 1975, I really got hooked because we got in the back of the pickup truck and went to California, hitting all the national parks that we could on the way. Tons of hiking, tons of backpacking in the big, Grand Canyon, Colorado Rockies. I was kind of hooked at that particular stage.
Right, and then as you became an adult, as you got older, you started out, I think I read, doing small climbs, like, at the gym or whatever, those walls that we all see.
Totally scared to death.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of climbers are scared of heights. Right. I mean, I was terrified, absolutely terrified, and I swore that I would never do it again after leaving the gyms. And they're only 20, 25 feet high.
Right, so, I mean, how did you find your way from these, I mean, this is Mount freaking Everest, I'm sorry, but this is really exciting. So how did you find your way from, the small gyms to Mount Everest?
Well, I found myself hiking and backpacking in Maine, Mount Katahdin, which is the biggest mountain in Maine. It's a very remote place. There's a very famous trail at the top of the summit. It's called the Knife Edge.
Okay. That doesn't bode well.
No, there's a 1,200-foot drop on both sides, but it's really hard. You couldn't fall off. You can't fall off a sidewalk.
Right.
But tell your brain that. Scared to death. And I aborted my hike across there with a friend. I walked back, sat there, and ate lunch by myself while my friend went on. And a whole group of Cub Scouts came up, and they just zipped across there without even any hesitation at all.
Right.
And I said, mind problem, not doing it, no mind problems for me.
Right.
So then I kind of started to say, you know what, I think it's just something that just needs to be overcome. So I found that the more I did climb, and when I got back into the climbing gym, if I could climb to 25 feet and look down and see the ground, my mind got used to it, I was fine. A year later, 2 years later, I'm finding myself hanging over 3,000 feet of open air in the Colorado Rockies, not bothering me at all. Right. So a little bit of exposure was really no difference then. I mean, you're going to die if you fall from 25 feet anyway in the head. And so, you know what, there's really no difference. And in my mind, ever since then, I've been terrified at times climbing mountains.
Right.
But not from exposure.
All right, so you've conquered your fear of heights and all this stuff, and you're sort of building your way up, and then all of a sudden it hits you, I should try to climb Mount Everest. Is that how it happened?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps in between. I mean, I decided to go to Mount Rainier in Washington State in the mid-'90s. And I know that was the place that you can take a seminar, you can take a 6-day seminar while you ascend the mountain.
Right.
And it was such a great experience, very challenging, very scary. Very, not without, some significant fear on my part, but on that mountain and successfully summiting that, I said, you know what, I'm going to do a big mountain once a year. Right. And I've just done that ever since. And it was years later it was actually 2004 before I thought, you know what, maybe I got the stuff. Yeah. But I needed a little bit more challenge once I got to the summit of Mount McKinley, Denali in Alaska, which is the highest in North America. On the second try, the first try we were stymied by weather. Right. And then once we got up there, I was like, well, maybe I've got the stuff. Right. But then I knew I needed to have a little bit more high altitude experience, so I went down to Argentina in the Andes range and climbed the biggest mountain in the Western Hemisphere called Aconcagua. Okay. It's 7,000 meters, 23,000 feet. It's my middle name, Aconcagua. Aconcagua, yeah.
So then when you finally made the decision that you were going to attempt to scale Mount Everest, I mean, what was the reaction like of family or friends? Now you're a chiropractor. Right. So, I mean, so the reaction of family and friends must have been one thing. What did patients say? Were they asking for referrals?
No, I mean, people are pretty excited about it. I mean, really, nobody climbs Everest.
In the event that you weren't coming back is what I was implying.
Well, I got a couple of, jokes like that. Right. I mean, people trust my ability to make good decisions, and I trust my ability to make good decisions, but, there's always the chance. Right. I mean, there's two separate ways that you can take a big, ice nap on a big mountain, and that's from objective hazard, which is really something like that you really didn't do anything wrong, like you're here and you get whacked by a lightning bolt or an avalanche, an ice fall. And then there's things that in most accidents happen from human error.
Right. Now, what was the training process like? I imagine there was a lot of cardio involved, maybe some weights, a few trips to the psychiatrist.
Yeah. Well, is that
What's
fitness?
wrong with you?
Yeah.
But so what was it like, the training process to get yourself prepared for this excursion?
Ever since I was 12, I've been heavily into fitness. So it was a logic. I've always been, a runner. I've always been an athlete. I've always been drawn to endurance-type self-locomoting activities, biking, triathlons, marathons. I mean, I ran my first marathon when I was 16 years old. Wow. I ran competitively in high school as well as at Rhode Island College, and I've never stopped. So it just became different forms.
Right. Yeah. And so you knew what you were going to have to do, and it wasn't too much of a stretch to train for this.
A lot of studying. No, it was a big stretch. I mean, I launched into a program that rocked my complete world.
Right.
I have horror in my mind from it ever since. It was painful stuff.
Right.
So it was all my usual training plus only a half an hour twice a week with this particular trainer.
Wow.
But the intensity of that, it was hard to drive home afterwards. I mean, I really couldn't grasp my hands on the wheel to drive home. It was really, really taxing. But it put me in the right place physically.
Excellent.
And by dealing
mentally
with it,
too.
yeah, exactly. Mentally, it's as much like anything else in this world. It's as much mental as it is physical.
Sure. Now, so the month you have to now. It takes about 2 months to do the climb, correct?
Yeah.
So this was in early. This was 2008. Now, when did you head over to Mount Everest?
March.
This is in Nepal, correct?
Nepal.
That's where it's located. And isn't there a $10,000 fee just to get the permit to climb?
Just to get the permit, just to get permission.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like a pass to die or something. So you go over there, and it's time to start the excursion or the trek. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah, to trek in.
And then a climb. And there's a whole group of individuals that go with you, a crew, a team.
Sure. Yeah.
And what's it like? I mean, you start your journey, and tell us about it.
Well, first you fly, it's kind of a cool flight because you fly from, JFK over the North Pole down to the other side of the world into Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong to Bangkok, and Bangkok to Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, which is a fascinating, ancient, filthy third world country.
Really?
Yeah.
And Mount Everest is part of the Himalayas, correct?
Part of the Himalayas, yeah.
Highest, obviously.
The highest mountains in the world are called the 8,000-meter peaks, and there's 14 of them, and they're all in the Himalayan range.
Right.
So they stretch from Nepal through Tibet into Pakistan.
And so the journey itself takes how long from when you began the trek?
Well, when you start in Kathmandu, the capital, then you take a short flight, an hour over the foothills of the Himalaya to a little village called Lukla, and it's a 40-mile hike from there, and it takes 10 days. We take 10 days to acclimatize because you're starting at 9,000 feet, for example. Exactly. Altitude is the biggest challenge on this hill. It's huge. And there's 1/3 of the oxygen on the summit that there is in this room as we speak here.
Wow.
So at base camp at 17,500 feet, there's exactly half the oxygen, which if we just got in a helicopter and we plopped right onto base camp, we'd be dead in 2 hours if we weren't acclimatized. But our bodies, being as brilliant as they are, and to that huge stress, given enough time, and we have the science that allows us to understand how we can acclimatize.
Yeah.
If you just take time and drink a lot and go slow and eat, and then your body gets somewhat used to it to base camp.
So then what's it like when you finally reach the summit? You're on top of the world, literally.
Yeah, you're on top of the world, but you just don't. You're essentially the mental capability of a slow 4-year-old.
Yeah, there's nothing of it. There's no IHOP up there, I take it.
No IHOP. There's really no brain power either.
Right.
I mean, you're in an inebriated state, and
like I am right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the same.
Yeah.
But there was only one goal in my mind when we made you start the summit from Camp 4 at 26,000 feet.
Right.
Now, above 24,000 feet is known as the death zone, which means the body can't survive for any time, even with supplementary oxygen. So you're trying to make a dash of that last 3 or 4 days to get up there and get down. So you don't die.
Right, the death zone is what a lot of our guests refer to this chair as.
Exactly.
So you've done very well. And Dr. Tim, I wish we had more time to get into some other stuff, but you do have a website that people can visit, which is?
drtimwarren.com.
Excellent, and there's a lot more things people can learn about you and your journey and what it is you're continuing to do. And I just know I speak for the entire state when I say we're very, very proud of what you've done representing Rhode Island up there at the summit of Mount Everest. So,
thanks so much.
Thank you very much for being here and for sharing your story, and we wish you continued success.
All right, thanks so much.
All righty, Dr. Tim Warren, ladies and gentlemen.